Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast, where each week we speak with brands, icons, innovators, and trailblazers within the fly fishing industry, exploring both the successes and failures they've encountered along the way to become who they are today. But first, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast or joined our email list, please do so by going to the flyfisherinsiderpodcast.com, or you can also find us on Instagram at flyfisherinsiderpodcast. Now let's begin. Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Today our guest is Nick Torres from Waterworks Lamson. Nick is the community manager over at Waterworks Lamson, and he's here today to tell us more. Nick, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks, Greg. Good to be here.
Yeah, no worries. We're excited as well. I know we've talked a fair bit about what's going on at Lamson and stuff like that. So I think where I want to go is like the history of Lamson, when it started, the background, where it started, all those cool little details.
Definitely. Yeah. So we kind of have kind of a cool history with the company. So our founding partners, Mark Ferris and Michael Harrison, they actually started a company for specialized bike parts, like mountain biking parts, working with companies like Cannondale and Scott. And they moved up to Ketchum, Idaho in late 80s to, get that going. Mark is kind of the mad scientist behind all of the engineering, designing here at the company. And so him and Michael kind of kicked that off, and kind of mid 90s, they start, Michael and Mark especially is avid fly fishermen, and they kind of transitioned from bike parts into the fly fishing arena towards the mid 90s. Started out, actually, I think the first fishing product that we came out with as a company was called the catch and release tool, which we still make to this day. It's a very popular little piece of gear. Really great for keeping the fish in the water. Minimal handling, pop the hook right out. Don't even have to, take them out of the water. So we started out with that. And then the first reels that we made, I think 1996, came out with the first generation Purist and first generation Force reels, which were really, kind of revolutionary at the time. Think back to the mid 90s, fly reels were all kind of cut from the same cloth, if you will, very, very simple, a million different, 80 plus different parts to them, no sealed drag systems, etc. And they came out with these reels that were the lightest thing that anyone had ever seen. I think they were right around, 2.73 ounces, something like that. Had sealed drag systems, looked dramatically different than anything else that was out there, and we're really successful pretty much from the get-go. A little ahead of their time. I think back then there was a little pushback as far as the looks, because they looked so radically different, and we were using large arbors when large arbors didn't exist and things like that. But in the years that followed, you really saw the market kind of follow that same pattern when it came to fly reels, which is really cool to see.
Yeah. Nick, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I actually remember when Lamson did come out with those reels, and that was my thought back then too. I mean, paint me into a box or a corner, I don't care. But I thought, what is this company thinking? What are they doing? It's not the standard what everyone else is doing. You know what I mean? And I remember that. And it's funny. I just look at it. I'm like, yeah, I never thought about the technology of like the large arbor or lighter and this and that. I was just, different. And I'm sure a lot of listeners out there are thinking, oh yeah, I recall that as well. So it's funny that, that you guys, that you brought that up. So I just think I wanted to touch on that. So for sure.
No, yeah, it's funny. Like the first generation Lightspeed, I don't know if you remember that reel. Came out shortly after we did the Force and the Purist, but had that really wide, large arbor and those big, big holes cut in the side. People were like, it looks like a spaceship. But I mean, that ended up being one of the most popular reels we ever made. And, a couple of years down the road, you started seeing other reels coming out that had that wide arbor and kind of became the standard, down the road.
Absolutely. And then the seal drag, even to this day.
Exactly. Our drag system is one of the things that really makes our reels unique. It's super minimalistic so that there isn't a lot of, different moving parts, not a lot of things that can go wrong with it. It really doesn't fail. And it's super compact, which allows us to make the overall weight of the reel, reduced and much lighter. But yeah, just super dependable, reliable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to get into the drag stuff later on in the show for sure, because I know I've used the drag on the Cobalt, and it's like you can stop and make a shark with that thing. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
So Nick, you talk about the company and its origination or its origins. What was what were the focuses of the company going from the bike manufacturing, and then you started making the reels? What was the focus? Like, we need to dominate into the fly fishing market, or were you slowly going to enter the market? Like, where do you think the company mindset was at back then?
I really think it came from a place of, Mark as an engineer looking at what was out there and seeing where there could be vast improvement, and, that's kind of how he thinks. He's really kind of gear oriented, looks at things and sees how they can be improved, really detail oriented in that way. But yeah, I think, he just saw, an opportunity to improve things and kind of went with it. We started out at that time, under the name Waterworks. We were just the Waterworks reel company when we came out with those first gen Purist and Force. And when we first started making reels, Ryan Harrison, also a founding partner, kind of handles all the business side of things in the company. Now, him and Mark and Michael, they went to some of the top rod manufacturers at the time, G. Loomis, Sage, and kind of met with those guys that were designing rods, Jerry Seam and Ray Jeff and those guys, and kind of asked them, how can we make reels better for rods? And what they found was that a lot of these rod manufacturers, designers, were designing fly rods and casting them without reels on them, because they were really trying to, feel the sensitivity of the rod and how it interacts with the line in casting. And they found that with the reel on the rod, there was more interference in, the feel of the line loading and the bend of the rod, et cetera. And so Ryan and Mark, they went away from that with kind of our design ethos, which is to make the reel with the least amount of interference in your casting as possible. And the way to do that is by reducing the weight and making the reel as light as we can. And then also the concept from the center axis kind of arose from that. So by delevering the reel, aligning it with the center of the rod, you're able to really feel the rod in kind of more of a pure form interacting with the line without any interference, from the weight of the reel at the, hanging off the side of the rod. So they came up with that actually back then in the mid 90s, and, had a relationship with Sage, and right around that time they acquired the Lamson name from Sage, at that time, because Sage had, I think, purchased the Lamson company from Charlie Lamson, who was, the original reel maker of the Lamsons out of Washington back in the 80s, early 90s, I think. Yeah. But So we were working with them. We actually designed that center axis back then, and Sage released a few models of it with their Sage rods. They did really small sizes at that time, and so it definitely had kind of a core following, but didn't quite catch on. Back then it was a pretty expensive setup altogether. I think it was like $1,100 back in the 90s, which was
insane.
Don't quote me on that. I'm not exactly sure what the price was, but it was substantial and really small sizes. What we found is that the bigger you go, the heavier reel that you're working with, the more benefit you feel from having that reel centrally aligned, and removing that swing weight from it. So the bigger you go, 5, 6, 7, 8 weight, setup sizes, you really start feeling that benefit more and more. So it's been really cool with our current line of center axis rods, getting to fish those and really seeing kind of the fruits of that labor.
Crazy. Hey, Nick, I'm just going to get you to talk into the phone just a bit more. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Is that better?
Yeah. So Nick, when Sage was producing these rods, were they in the reel market themselves? Like, I'm just wondering how, were you guys competing with them?
Yeah, they were making reels. They were making reels back then. They were actually, made Lamson reels for a while. When they purchased the company from Charlie, I think they bought, he had a machine shop, et cetera, and they bought everything and were kind of making those reels under the Sage name, Lamson with Sage. But yeah, so they were making. We actually helped design a reel for them back then. I forget exactly what model it was. It was like, I don't remember.
Crazy.
3300 or something like that. But they were making reels at the time, not a ton, but it was the concept of the integrated reel in the rod system. That they licensed from us and we designed for them, and then they produced it.
So I got to ask, is Sage licensing anything from you guys currently?
No, not currently. And that was in like the late 90s, so we're talking 22 years.
A different plane.
So no, we don't have any affiliation or connection with them right now. They're a great company, don't get me wrong.
I know what you mean, though. Because that was like shocking to me. Like I didn't actually know that, so that's kind of cool. That's one thing with podcasting, man. You learn so much, so for sure. All right, so Lamson's making, you guys have merged together. You're making this. You've got the center axis going out. All this stuff. You got the seal drags. You got the large arbor. So you kind of revolutionize that sort of stuff. When did you start introducing other other reels and lineups? Like, when did you get to the point where it's like, okay, we're in this. We got a game going on. We're the industry's taken to us. People, your consumers, are buying our product. Like, when did you go, we're full on fly fishing? Like, when do you think the owners started at that point?
So after the Force and the Purist, then we did the Lightspeed. The Lightspeed was the first reel we did under the Waterworks Lamson name that we currently have. That was right around 99, 98, I want to say. And so from there, we just kept going. And, we started out with those really high-end reels, the Purist and the Force, had a high price point. The Lightspeed, we were trying to get the price point down a little bit, have something that was kind of more accessible to the average fly angler. It wasn't so radically visually different the way that the Force was. And so we did the Lightspeed. It was really successful. So we started getting into other categories of reel. We did the Velocity for a while. Velocity was replaced with the Speedster. The first generation Guru ended up being really successful, and so we kept that in our lineup for a long time. But really, it's just been a matter of redesigning, trying to improve, always trying to figure out how to make things better, lighter, stronger. And so you've seen our reels evolve over the years and different lines of reels. And that's really just been, the process of refining, improving, trying to always innovate design, things like that. Seeing what works, what doesn't, what reels are successful, how the market responds to different reels, et cetera, things like that.
Absolutely. And you guys, you haven't done anything reel specific. And what I mean by that is like a tarpon reel or a muskie, you know what I mean? It's always been a generic, like an 8-weight, 5-weight, 6-weight, all that sort of stuff.
Well, I mean, kind of. So we really started out in the trout freshwater fly fishing world. But we have moved into other categories like saltwater specific reels. So, you're familiar with our cobalt. We also had the predecessor to the cobalt, which was the Vanquish, which was kind of our first foray into the, big game saltwater reels for things like tarpon and tuna GTs. And so I don't want to like pin down any specific reel to a certain fish, but we definitely try to design reels according to purpose, right? And so our freshwater, trout reels are really kind of designed with that in mind. Our saltwater reels are designed with, what you're going to encounter on the flats or in blue water, with that in mind. And then we also have, some of the crossovers that really work well for both. I mean, to be honest, you could fish any of our reels in both fresh or saltwater. But, some of them are definitely going to be better suited for specific types of fishing. Like the Speedster, we came out with that. We made it in all sizes, freshwater and saltwater, but that really large, narrow arbor on that reel was really designed, with fish that are going to take out a lot of line in mind. Flats fishing for bonefish, especially when you have a ton of line out there, you want to pick up as much line as fast as possible. And, that super large, narrow spool really allows you to do that well. And so just little things like that, we're always, have the fishing in mind when we're designing products. And so we just kind of go based on that.
It's such a good answer because I love that because it was going to lead me into like the technology that you guys are integrating into your reels. And I think part of that technology is due to the fact that you're actual fishermen and, like everyone in the company fly fishes. And, you can see that in the build of your reels. Like you said, like, the larger arbors, the narrow spools, like all these features that are wanted in that reel. How important do you feel is that technology going forward? And I know you guys are always pushing that technology because you already admitted that at the beginning of the show when you said for large arbor, seal drag, all that sort of stuff. So how important do you think it is for a reel company to continue on that trend?
Oh, I think it's extremely important. Any company that doesn't continue to innovate and improve, is just going to get stagnant. I mean, that's kind of the reality of the world we live in. But no, I think it's extremely important. And like you said, most of us here at the company do fish, and our reels are made to be fished. They're made to be on the water, to get beat up, to keep working when it's cold, when it's warm, whatever. And I think that's reflected, in our product, the way that we all approach the sport and fish ourselves. There's reels that are super, super great reels, but are almost, you almost don't want to get a scratch on them. You almost want to keep them on the shelf because they're so pretty. But our reels try to, combine that aesthetic, appeal of just a really good looking reel with just total functionality, durability, reliability. Those are kind of our ethos.
Yeah, 100% for sure. So, Nick, when you talked about some of the aesthetics of the reels, like I'm a fan of the cobalt. Aesthetically, it's a nice reel. I like the drag system on that reel. Like what And that's correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that's the most expensive reel in your lineup. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the Cobalt 12 weight, I guess would be the highest price point in our reel lineup. And that's a reel that's designed for, the biggest game fish in the world, right? So if you're going to spend $10,000-$15,000 going to the Seychelles or, Christmas Island or something to, catch the fish of a lifetime on the trip of a lifetime, you don't want to shortchange yourself, when it comes to gear. So you want something that's going to be able to stand up to the elements and the fish and whatever else you throw at it. And so that's when I recommend, picking up that Cobalt reel, because it's not going to let you down, and, you're going to get your money's worth out of it for sure, even though it is a higher price point.
Yeah, agree. So speaking of with the reels, like what's the number one selling? Like what's your, like without a doubt, like you guys are just like cranking through them mostly right now?
Yeah. I would say the Speedster and the Guru have always kind of been the bread and butter of our lineup. Fully machined US made reels at the price points that they're at, those reels are tough to beat at that price point. And so they've always been extremely popular. As far as best selling, our liquid reels and the 3-packs, I would say, are probably our best selling reels, because, you're getting the quality of our drag system, but at such a value, that, entry level anglers can get into it. They're great for guides that are going to have, 5, 6 rod reel setups in their boat at any given time. Because they're not going to break the bank, but they're still going to work time after time, hold up, still have that reliability. And I think those are the highest selling reel that we have right now. I mean, it's a $99 price point on that reel, and it has the same drag system that we have, across the board in all of our freshwater reels. And so you're really getting the same fish fighting capability, without, having to drop a ton of money. It's a die cast case and spool, so it allows us to produce more of them at a lower cost. All the internal components and stuff are still U.S. made steel, Teflon cone, etc. But having that die cast spool and case really allows us to get the price point on there that we wanted.
That's awesome, buddy. It's funny because you're getting, it's just so overbuilt, and you're getting such value in that reel. So, for sure,
that's the thing, and especially those 3-packs. For what you do up there with the, with the lake stillwater fishing and stuff.
3 different lines.
Those 3-packs are just ideal for you guys, because you got your reel, with 2 spare spools in the case, so you can have your sink line on one of those spools. You can have your floating line on another. You could have like a check nymph rig, set up on a different spool.
My clear camo. I'm loving my clear camo these days.
So. Yeah, exactly. But no, it just gives you a lot of versatility. Yeah, and you're basically getting a free case and a spool when you buy one of those 3-packs. I believe the retail on them is $189. For a reel with 2 spare spools in a case, it's pretty tough to beat that.
Yeah, you're dialed. And especially, like you said, for someone that wants to enter the market, you're not breaking the bank. You don't have to buy 3 different, reels. It's just a good opportunity. I fully agree with that. So, I mean, everyone knows, it's no surprise, like the Fly Fishing Insider podcast. I mean, we've done a few things together with Lamson, and we highly support you. And I'm very vocal on how much I love my Speedster. So, that's for sure. I'll leave it at that. So, Nick, I definitely want to shift, and I want to shift to like your involvement. So, like, you came into the company as the community manager. When did you arrive into Lamson, and what is your role there exactly?
Yeah, so I'm the community manager now, but I didn't start out in that role. I'm going on 6.5 years, I think, now with the company. Started out in production, building reels, assembling reels. I was actually working for the Forest Service at the time as doing trails here in Idaho in kind of our wilderness and national forest areas. and I love that job. I got to go hike around the mountains every day and ride dirt bikes and dig in the dirt and cut down trees and fun stuff like that. But it was a seasonal job, right? And so I was doing it, from May until October typically. And so I needed a winter job, and that's when, I got in with Lamson. I was super, I still really have the bug, but, very passionate about fly fishing. Always been really into fishing, but, the last 10, 15 years or so, really focusing on fly fishing. But so I figured it'd be a cool place to work and get to play with fly reels every day, and started out just doing it for the winter. Things were going good, and in the spring they asked me to stay on, and so I didn't end up going back to the Forest Service at that time, and I've been there ever since. And I've kind of worked in a lot of different roles there, from assembly to warranty, QC, just about everything at one point or another. And I've been in my current role as community manager now for 3 or 4 years. I manage all of our social media accounts. I manage our pro programs and ambassadors. And I do a lot of the trade shows and stuff like that. So go to the trade show. You might see me work in the booth if we ever get the trade shows back anyways.
It's funny. You're going to get a ton of like, hey, Nick, I heard you on the Fly Fishing Insider podcast. Yeah. Could I be on the pro stuff? Now that they know your names? That's funny. So,
yeah, as far as the pro staff, I'll just talk about that for a second. It's something that, is very important to us as a company, that it's done the right way, that the right people are participating in it. We really have a focus on fly fishing guides and fly shop employees, the guys that have the boots on the ground. And we work really closely with our territory reps so that, everybody kind of knows everybody. It's just a great way to build relationships in the industry and with the people that are actually out there, doing it every day with the clients. So it's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up for sure. So, Nick, one of the things, and why I asked you like why and how long you've been working there, is like, tell me about some of the changes that you've seen over the time, like at Lamson, from the time you started to where they are now, like the growth. Because the brand has really, I find that like within the past couple of years, really exploded. With the products,
the
industry. Tell us. Yeah,
it's been great. It's been great being a part of that growth. And you're right, especially in the last 2, 3, 4 years, we've really, really expanded as a company. Obviously getting into the rod game has been really big, and expanding our line of reels, coming out with new designs, colors, all kind of new stuff for us. And so we're really excited about, what's down the road.
So then, with that being said, I'm going to ask you what's down the road, but first, you just mentioned something about rods. You guys are, what's going on with that?
Yeah, so we just got into the rod game in the last couple of years. Started out with our current rods that we have now, our SS freshwater line of rods and our SSS saltwater line of rods. Mm-hmm. We wanted to kind of start small and with a product that we really, believed in. We think these are great rods. Spent a lot of time designing these, redesigning them, working on bend tapers, or bend profiles and rod tapers. And, we think we have a really solid product, and the center axes as well. That's been really cool seeing those get off the ground and expanding into the saltwater systems. We've had just a great response to our saltwater line of rods down in Florida and on the Gulf. And again, it's a rod that's made to be fished. It's not going to break the bank account. We have a really good kind of mid-level price point on our rods. And so for the amount of rod you're getting for the price, it's
yeah. What's the weights for this? You said saltwater. So what are the weights then? Are you up to like 12, 9 to 12?
We have
10 to,
yeah. Yeah. So we have 6 weight through 11 weights in our saltwater.
Okay.
And we actually have, I don't know how much I can talk about, but we're definitely going to have some new things coming out in the next year or two in regards to rods that I'm really excited about. But right now our saltwater range is 6 through 11 weight. It's a fast action rod, so you're going to be able to cut through the wind. Honestly, the 6 weight saltwater rod is one of my personal favorites. Obviously, I don't get to throw 10 and 11 weights too often here in Idaho, unless I'm musky fishing. But no, the 6 weight saltwater rod is just such a workhorse of a rod. I mean, it's just good for everything. I use it a lot for bass fishing, throwing streamers for big trout. I use it as a nymph rod because I do a lot of roll casting, and it's a great roll casting rod. But yeah, our 8 weight's another one that's been super popular. I'd say our 8 weight and our 10 weight are probably our 2 most popular rods right now.
That's awesome, man. Nick, you mentioned that you have a lot of other stuff with rods that you can't talk about, but you're more than welcome to talk about it on the show. So don't let me hold you back unless it's company.
Yeah, no, no problem. No, but there's just some stuff in the works that I'm pretty excited about. I think it's going to be really great.
And that's
an eye out.
Yeah, that's what I want to. That's what I want to kind of, without getting into details, because I don't, I don't want to get into those details because it's kind of putting you in the spot. But I do want to talk about how you see the progression of the company and the growth. The future. Obviously, with the rods and the reels and all that sort of stuff that you guys have going on. What can we expect from Lamson? Again, not mentioning the product itself, but where do you think the direction's going? Are you guys game changers? Are you keeping pace? Walk us through that.
I think we really want to cover all the bases. We want to be a rod reel company that makes products that are applicable in all areas of fly fishing, right? And so it's going to take some expanding to get there, but I think it's going to be really exciting to see how that happens, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Definitely. Speaking of seeing how things happen, I know we're just coming out of COVID and you guys are just opening up as well. How was that? How did you guys handle all that? That was obviously a change for I know I've spoken to many brands since. And how did you guys handle that? And how did you, what do you feel the outcome of that is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of living in a new world right now, right? It was, kind of touch and go there for a while, like it was for everybody. Not really from the company perspective, but just seeing how things were going to shake out as far as, lockdown, quarantine, people getting to work, et cetera. And just new procedures, people wearing masks and gloves and staying 6 feet apart from each other while they're building reels, and a lot of logistics that our director of operations Tim Volk was really key in kind of figuring out how to keep that all going and doing it in a safe way for everybody. But I've been really proud of how the company's handled everything. We were able to keep going business as usual. We were lucky in that regard. There's a lot of businesses out there, restaurants, et cetera, that, have really struggled through this. We were fortunate in that regard that we didn't have to completely close down. We just been trying to work with our dealers as much as possible. And, our dealers are very near and dear to us. And so we just, try to accommodate them and know what they're going through. Many had to shut down, for a time, especially in the spring, when the season is really just kicking off. I know it was tough on a lot of dealers out there, but I feel like the industry as a whole is kind of pushing through better than expected. So I'm really optimistic about that. It's been interesting. I've been fortunate because I was already working from home when this all hit, and so it made that transition a little easier. But I also have 2 little kids, and having them home all day for the last 2-3 months has been challenging. But we find ways to work around and solve problems, and that's just that's what we do.
I hear you. I mean, what's that wine at 4:00? So my wife always says. It's funny because you're right. The fly fishing community, we are such a strong knit community and a passionate community and supportive. I think we have handled it better than expected. I mean, it's funny, and I think you nailed it right there. Like, everyone's like, wow, things are going to shut down. Everyone's going to be, and I mean, you don't hear too much of that. I'm not saying that not everyone has, but you don't hear too much about it, or at least we're not hearing too much about it. So, it was go ahead. Yeah.
There's just that time for a few weeks there, especially in the beginning, where there was just so much uncertainty. Nobody knew how long this was going to last. Is the fly shop going to have to be closed all summer? Like, what's going to happen? And so, I think there's a lot of worry for a while. But I mean, I've seen the vast majority of shops now reopened and doing so safely and booking guide trips again. And we're also fortunate that our industry, was one of the best things you could do to social distance, right? Go fishing, get away from people. We were fortunate in that regard as opposed to maybe like the food service industry, restaurant industry, etc., where, people were stuck at home and had to stay away from people. And what's the best thing to do? Well, you go fishing, get away from people, and enjoy some fresh air in the outdoors. So I think that helped as well. And so I've just been really happy to see all the shops opening up their doors and getting their summer trips booked again. So I'm pretty optimistic. I'm an optimistic person anyways, but
that's true. You are. From what I know of you, man. So, Nick, it's funny because like you mentioned, right? Like there was that portion of uncertainty. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see that turnaround. IFTD shut down. I'm not going to see you there this year. So
I know it's a bummer.
I know. So how are you guys going to show your new product? Do you have anything new coming out this year? I know you got some stuff in the works, but
we do have some stuff in the works, and I'm not exactly sure on timeline right now. That would definitely be a Tim question, our director of operations there. But, I think it'll be a challenge that all of us in the industry are going to have to figure out, whether we're doing digital shows or, maybe that's going to be what we're looking at for the near future is trade shows online. I don't know, to be honest. I think it's something we're all still working on.
Yeah, I know. We have
time will tell. I guess we got to kind of just wait and see, what happens. I'm wondering about even the shows, next January, the fly fishing shows.
Yeah, I mean,
because there's still a lot of uncertainty out there for sure.
Yeah, they're just so important to the community. And to the consumers, right? Like, that's our chance to shine and really explain in detail the workings of it. It's your hands on, you know what I mean? And whatnot. So it's kind of, right. Again, the landscape's changed. So for sure, trying to figure that out as a community as a whole. So definitely, Nick, lots of.
Yeah, I think eventually they'll be back. They'll be back and, it might not be this fall or maybe not even next January, but they'll be back. We'll get over this. We'll get back to our trade shows. We'll see everybody out there. Come by, say hi next time we do one.
Yeah, you bet. Until then, I mean, you guys are still shipping. I mean, everyone's still shipping, but you guys are still shipping. You're hitting your dealers. Your dealers are buying. Everything's good there, so that's awesome. That's definitely. I mean, you guys only work with dealers, is that right?
Yeah. So we sell through our dealers. 25 years established dealers in a lot of cases that we've been working with since day one. We do have some discontinued legacy product that's available direct on our website. And so you can always go and check out, if you have an older discontinued reel, we might still have some spools or stuff like that in stock. You can check our website for that. But no, our dealers are extremely important to us.
That's awesome. And I'm glad you guys are kind of going that way. I mean, it just shows the community support and what that Lamson is for sure. So, Nick, sure. I want to ask you, man, before I let you go here, do you have any last words?
Let's go fishing. When are we going to go up to BC this fall or something? Maybe?
You put me on the spot, man. Well, I get you.
No, I'm just saying. Or I got to get you down here to Idaho.
There you are. Yeah, it's funny. Actually, you know what? I guess I can share something. For those that don't know, Nick and I were actually supposed to, and a few other people were supposed to go to Costa Rica. And COVID kind of put a kibosh on that. So,
April 20th, right?
Yeah. That's
tough timing on that one. It was a heartbreaker.
Yeah, we were supposed to go and catch some tarpon. Just monster tarpon in Costa Rica for a week, but thanks to COVID, we're not. So yes, to answer your question, maybe I can see what we can do to get you up here for a steelhead.
Did you get your ticket refunded, or are you doing the credit thing like me?
You know what, Nick? I actually bought the insurance, and I'm still fighting. I'm like, and they're like, but it's COVID. I'm like, yeah, but I actually paid for insurance. I gave you guys extra money for the insurance, and I'm still fighting. I think the company that I got insurance through is probably going to go broke, and they're just waiting. They're probably doing the paperwork for Chapter 11 right now. So, yeah. So I think I'm going to be out, $1,200 or something like that, which kind of sucks, but whatever. Well,
I think you'll at least get the credit, right? And so we'll just have to do another trip here in a year or so, whenever we can.
Oh, we're gonna hit it, and if I can make something materialize here for BC Steelhead in October for sure. So let's make that happen, definitely. Besides going fishing, any last words for our listeners out there? Do you guys have anything for Lamson? Let us know.
Yeah, no, just thanks for having us on today, and everybody stay safe out there, and it's summertime. Go fishing.
Awesome. And before I do let you go, Nick, where can someone find you at? Where can they reach out to you guys at? Where can all your social channels, everything that's Lamson related?
Totally. Yeah. So check us out on Instagram or Facebook. Instagram, we're just at Waterworks Lamson, and Waterworks Lamson on Facebook as well. You can check out our website, www.waterworks-lamson.com. You can see all of our products. Sign up for our newsletter. You'll be the first one to know about new product, cool stuff coming out, etc. And yeah.
Awesome. I'm gonna make sure I put all those deets in the show notes, and the listeners can locate you. So, Nick, I want to thank you today for being our guest. Listeners, I want to thank you guys as well. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, everyone.
No worries. You've been listening to the Fly Fishing Insider podcast. If you like this podcast episode, please let us know. Leave a review and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast listening platform.